Christine, aka Crafty Potential, and I'm a crafter for Tonic Studios, and today I will be making the Wonderful Wellies with you using the Puddle Perfect patterned papers as well. So in the instructions for this set, it tells you exactly how many pieces you need to create one wellie. So if you want to just create one gift box wellie to give to somebody, then you just follow the exact quantities that they tell you in the instructions. But if you are wanting to make a pair of them, make sure you double everything when you're cutting it. Also, I think we're going to start by creating the sort of like tread and sole of our wellie, and in the instructions it tells you to cut 3 of this sole piece per wellie, but you can actually play around with what colours you cut these out of. I have been cutting 1 out of the same colour that I want my treads to be in that go around the bottom of the wellie, and I've been cutting the other 2 out of the same colour that I'm creating my full wellie from. So you can sort of play around with which pieces you cut from what colour. So to begin with, we're going to start off with 1 of the sole piece and 1 of each of the two-handedness of the tread pieces as well. They will come like this when you have die cut them, and then all you've got to do is just pre-fold all of those score lines. So I'm going to be making 2 wellies, and we'll probably switch between the different wellies that we're making, allowing glue to dry and stuff, but I have already pre-folded some of the pieces for this tread just to make it a little bit quicker, and you've not got to see me sit there and pre-fold everything as we're going round. But I just folded all of those semicircular glue tabs backwards, and then all of the little glue tabs. This one just has 2 on each end. This one has just 1 bend here, which is actually the back of the heel of the sole of the wellie. And then I've also added some 6mm red liner tape all the way around the perimeter of my wellie piece as well, and this is the bottom, so the unprofessional side. The professional side is going to be showing when you look up into the bottom of the wellie, like up into the tread of it, and then this side is what we're going to stick all of those glue tabs to. So you do need to get these round a specific way. You can start with the long piece here, and then you'll know exactly which one is supposed to go in which direction, but I quite like starting with the one that hasn't got the long piece on, because it has a tab here, and that then means that the tab is going to be under, so when you come to stick this one on, it's going to be much easier for getting your glue into that final glue tab on there. So if you're looking at your wellie this way up and you've got both your treads, try them into position, and you can see which one has that back piece for the heel of the wellie, and we're going to leave that one to one side for now, so we know that's going to go on this side of our base of our wellie with our adhesive, and this one actually has a glue tab on both ends of it, so don't get muddled up with which way up you start it. But if you have this one in view first, plus actually if you look at them when they're down flat, you see that the heel has a long flat piece on it as well, so you can kind of gauge which one is supposed to go at what end by that long flat piece of the heel of the wellie as well. So I'm going to start by removing a couple of the pieces of red liner tape here, and I'm going to start in this back corner down here with the sort of flap and the first semicircle on the flatter end of the tread piece here. So we're working with this large flat piece here, and we want to just butt that right into that corner and then press that first semicircle down and really get it stuck into the adhesive. And then we're just going to follow this around, adding on all of those semicircles and then removing the red liner tape as we go, or you can be more confident and remove all of it in one go as well, dependent on how you like to craft. And we can just follow this all the way around, pressing them into position around the circumference or the perimeter of the sole of our wellie. And if you've got any overlapping pieces of adhesive, you can just fold them up and over. And then we can just follow this around the curve of the wellie as well. And then when we get to the front of the wellie, you'll actually see that there is a marker on the sole just there, and that is actually coming perfectly into line with the score line of this little glue tab here as well. So that's perfectly where it's supposed to line up. So you can start here, or you can start in that back corner. I always like to start on a corner, because then I know that it's going to match up really nicely when you get to the front of it as well. This is mostly to help you with the top part of the wellie, this little notch on the front of it here. So now we've got that one round that side, we can remove the rest of the red liner tape. Fold those pieces over and then stick the other side of our tread on. So now we can move that tab inwards and then start with this heel piece on here, and that is going to secure that into position really nicely. And then we can just follow around the perimeter again of the sole of the wellie, adding all of those semicircle glue tabs on. And then once we get to this like toe of the wellie, this is going to line up absolutely perfectly. The cut line of the one we were just putting down with the score line of the previous one. And now we can take our glue and just finish off this little join here with that glue tab, and then the one on the back corner as well. Press that into position. Now in the instructions it does actually show you sticking another sole on top of this, but that would require you to have die cut 4 of these soles first. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave this off to one side, and when we have finished constructing our actual top portion of our wellie, we're just going to stick that straight on top of this one. So you don't need to go to that extra step of cutting a 4th sole to go over the top of this. It'll be totally adequate to add our double soled bottom of our wellie straight onto this one to add the tread onto our wellie. So put that out of the way so you're not going to accidentally stick something onto it. And you can also repeat the process to get your second tread for your wellie, your second wellie as well, if you are creating a pair of them. Then let's start with the top portion of the wellie boot. So for this, I have cut everything for 2 wellies here. So for a single wellie, you're going to need 2 more of the sole pieces in the main base colour you want your wellie boot to be in, and you want to stick tape around the perimeter of one of them. This one doesn't matter so much because we're going to add it on afterwards and we can just use glue to add that on, but I do think it's much easier and quicker to have some red liner tape all of the way around the edge of one of them to start it off. And then for each wellie you're also going to need 1 of each handedness of the 2 sides of the wellie. So you have both sides in the die set, and you're going to need 1 of each side to create each wellie, because obviously each wellie, even though one wellie is a right wellie and one is a left wellie, you're still going to have a right and left side of the same wellie. Just like we did with the tread, they differed and were the sort of mirror image of each other. You need that same thing for the sides of the wellie as well. So you need 1 of each of them to create your main sort of portion of the top side pieces of the wellie. You also have other pieces added in as well. If I move some of the extra ones out of the way and then show you the other pieces that you're going to need for creating your wellie. So basically this is the sole and these are the sides of the wellie. But then if you think about standing the wellie up, you need a back piece to your wellie. So there is a die in this set that gives you this lovely piece here with semicircular tabs down the sides of it, and it has a glue tab at the top. And then there's also this little piece here which actually just acts as a glue tab itself. It's not really an actual panel that you're going to see, so it doesn't particularly matter which colour you cut this out of, but you're going to need both of those pieces together to create the back of your wellie, and I will go into more detail with that when we get to that point as well. Then, if you again look at the top of your wellie, you need a piece to go on the top to cover your toes on the top of the wellie. So you have this die cut here, and you can see here I've been bringing in some of the patterned paper panels to decorate this as well. So it's quite a good idea to make one wellie first, maybe just out of some scrap card that you have or just white card, so that then you can visually see which pieces that you might want to cut from what colours when you're actually cutting all of your pieces. But I'm going to have a pretty toe piece on this wellie. And then if you think about how this is all going to come together, you've got one side, the other side, the back piece, the covering of the toes, and then we need this front piece to come up here. This would usually be like the tongue of a boot, but obviously with a wellie it's completely solid. So actually for this piece we do use the same piece that we use for the back of the wellie. So you need another piece like this for creating this piece here, and we are going to trim this as well. It's got little marks on it and we're going to trim it, but I'll get to that when we actually put this piece into position. But those are all of the pieces that you are going to need for creating your whole wellie, and the instructions do indicate all of those pieces that you're going to need, but sometimes it's nice to see them ahead of time so that you can again visually kind of decide what pieces you want to cut from what colours. Now I have decided to cut my wellie, or to create my wellie, from cream card. However, when we get to the end of this make, I am actually going to make the wellie a green colour, but I found it's quite nice to have the base already done in a cardstock colour and then use more die cuts of the same size from a patterned paper or a different coloured cardstock to then add on afterwards. So that's what I'm going to do for mine. If you're wondering why I'm mixing in green sort of patterns with a cream base, I am going to add more panels to this than what the instructions tell you to do, just to give you another way of making it that you maybe might not have thought about as well. So we need to get on to the construction of the bottom of this wellie. So we're going to start with the base that we have already put our adhesive all of the way around the edge on, and we're going to begin with, just take some of these front pieces off so that we can actually get the sort of front toe portion of the wellie in the right position. And this time I am starting with the front of the wellie because we have that marker there, and because we don't have a back piece this time working with the actual wellie. The back piece isn't attached like it was with the tread. I do find working on the front of the wellie is a bit easier this time. So what I want to do is I always want to start with whichever one has the glue tab, so that when you put the next one on afterwards, the glue tab's going to be underneath, which is going to make it easier for adding your glue on. You're not going to have to try and flick it underneath before you put the glue on. So to make it so that we can still see the little notch on the base of this, I'm going to fold that glue tab backwards, and then I'm just looking at this straight line that's a fold along here. And then we have the notch in the end of our wellie. If it'll focus, we've got the little notch just there. So I'm going to sort of flip this over, but in a way that I can still see where the notch is. So when you're doing this in person, it's going to be much simpler for you to put together than me trying to be able to show it to you. I don't know if you're going to sort of see. I'm kind of bringing this, it doesn't really want to focus, but I'm kind of bringing this in. So I've got the folded piece here, I'm bringing this inwards with my semicircular die cuts underneath. So we've got our tape exposed under there, and I'm bringing it in so that I can see the notch on the top, and then I'm lining up, or you can maybe just about see there, I'm lining up the edge of that fold line with the notch and then pressing the glue tab underneath to get it in the perfect position. If I kind of hold it differently, there we go. So you can see that's how I was lining the front portion of this up. So we're going to get that first glue tab pressed firmly, and then we're going to continue around the curvature of this base, removing the red liner tape as we go. And then bringing all of this around the edge of the sole, just as we did with the tread of the wellie boot, but this time we've actually got the full side panels instead of just the small tread piece. And then you can see here we've now got a glue tab just at the back here that's going to help us attach the bottom of the back piece onto here. Now we want to fold this glue tab back down so it's going to be in a good position for sticking. And we can also go ahead and take the red liner tape off of the rest of the perimeter as well. We're going to leave the back piece on for now because we're not actually working with the back of this wellie just yet. And then we want to bring in the other side of our wellie. And this time we don't have to worry about the notch because we know that this score line is perfectly lined up with the notch. So this time we can line up the score line with the cut line of our two wellie panels, and then we can press that first glue tab into position, get a really good strong bond, and then continue the rest of the wellie, curving it around the sole again. Until we've got this sort of piece in position. And now we can add a little bit of glue under that little seam of the front of our wellie just there. And we can press that into position so it's going to be held nicely, and we're creating that front portion of our wellie where your toes are going to go. Now, we do need to add our second sole onto this to cover up adhesive and to make it stronger. However, the next part is easier to do without the back piece already on, so we're just going to be careful and not place it down on our desk and press, so we're not going to stick it to anything. But for this, we want to take our front toe piece, which has all of the semicircles on. If I show you on, oh no, I was going to say if I show you on the back, but it's got a different pattern on the back. If you see, it's got the semicircle scores or glue tabs all the way around the perimeter. So you want to fold all of these, and I have found these two ones just here, so not the first two in the middle, the two that are kind of more on the curve of the boot. If you just snip into those up to the score line to make them two little half glue tabs, I find it goes together a little bit nicer. It follows round that curve really nicely then, because it allows those two little bits of glue tab to kind of overlap and bring the curve of the front of the wellie in a little bit nicer. So that is going to be what goes on here, but before we start sticking this in, it's quite nice to actually have this front part already stuck on, so we know that it's going to be in the perfect place. So if you remember me saying this piece before, this green piece, if you look at it up closely, it has two little notches just here, and we literally just want to snip. So get a long bladed pair of scissors and line up with the first notch, and then line up the rest of the blade with the second notch as you're cutting, and that's what you want to do to this piece. And then I'll take the one I've already folded all the glue tabs on. This is now going to be the perfect width to stick onto that glue tab. So it's the piece that we just cut. The edge that we just cut is going to be sticking onto that glue tab there. And don't worry about the join between my patterned paper and my coloured cardstock, because there is a decorative piece that goes between there that makes it look really nice and neat at that point as well. So we've got our main front piece of our wellie boot now, which is going to go in like this. And when I was sticking my previous pair together, I did find that it was better to do this in stages. So the first stage is going to be taking these two middle glue tabs just here, adding our adhesive onto those, and adhering those first. And because we have that seam in the middle and there's two glue tabs here, we want that little seam to be between the two glue tabs. So when we put this into position, it's going between the two glue tabs, and there is actually a notch on the die cut itself as well, so that you can really see exactly where that is supposed to line up with the to be the front of the wellie boot as well. So that is what we're going to do first of all. We just want to make sure that that piece is well and truly stuck into position before we try and glue the rest of this curve round. It just means that we know that part of it is really securely held into position. So at this point, I'm going to go off screen and get to this same stage with my second wellie as well, because I feel like it's going to be much easier to make two of them if we're switching between the two different wellies, because as one piece is drying, we can move on to the other one and do a little bit rather than you sitting there just waiting for glue to dry. So I'll be back when I've got to the exact same stage with my second wellie. Okay, so now I've got to the same point on both of my wellies. That's the one I've just stuck, so I'm going to leave that to dry a little bit first. And I'm coming back to the one that we were working on before. And we're going to carry on sticking all of our glue tabs on. Now, when I was doing this before, I was working on the entire side at the same time, and that did seem to work quite well. So it means that you can get all of your glue on there and then keep pressing the glue tabs in one at a time. So if you just fold up the glue tab so that you can get the nozzle of your glue in there, add a bit of glue to each of those little semicircular panels, and then bring this down. So basically we're following the curve of this side of the wellie with the fold line above our glue tabs, so we can sort of flick this top piece backwards so it's not in our way. You can kind of get your hand inside the wellie and line it up so, as I just said, the curve is lining up with the scored line just above all of your glue tabs on this sort of like front toe piece, and then we can just sort of press them into position. It is a little bit fiddly, like there's not much room to get your hands inside there, but again, glide folder, bone folder, anything that you have that you can press inside the actual box while you're making it to just firmly press the glue tab and help it adhere to the side of the wellie as the glue is sort of getting tacky and drying up. And then these back ones here we can kind of pinch together like so. And then this is where working on 2 pairs of wellies is obviously great, or 2 wellies to make a pair. While that is drying, I can move back to this wellie and do the exact same thing. Now this one is drying, we can come back to our first wellie and complete this side as well. So again, we're sort of manoeuvring it so that the side of the wellie is out of our way, and then we're adding our glue onto all of our glue tabs just on this patterned paper portion. I quite like the idea of doing them in different colours, and it helps visualise it, I think, for the video, to know that I'm just going up to the piece that is cut from the patterned paper when I'm adding the glue on at this point. And then we're literally just going to, again, follow that curve of the side of the wellie and just lining it up with the folded line just above all of the glue tabs of that top toe piece. It is a little bit tricky, but just keep persevering with it and manoeuvring it into place. Again, your glide folder, very handy at this point. Maybe your panels slip down a little bit, you can use it to raise it back up again, and you can use it to help you firmly press the glue tabs into place. And for that last glue tab, just pinching it like this for a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds whilst the glue just bonds is really great as well. Okay, now both wellies are at this same point. We can go back to the one that's been drying the longest, and we can start sticking this front portion of the wellie into position now as well. So this has a slight curvature on it, and I found when I was building my first 2, the easiest way to get this curvature right is to focus on the top glue tab. So we're going to add glue all the way down the glue tabs on one side, just like we were doing around this curved piece, but we're not going to worry where these glue tabs are at the moment. We're going to focus on that top one, getting the top one in the perfect position so that all of the score lines around the top are going to line up nicely, and then that means your lid is going to go on really nicely for your little gift box as well. So prise it out a little bit so we can get to all of those glue tabs, add a little bit of adhesive on all of them, and then remember we're focusing on the top one. So we're just pressing that into position so the fold of the top of that top glue tab is in line with the top cream side of our wellie, and we just make sure that's going to get a nice firm bond first. If you want to, I didn't actually do this with my original pair, but if you do want to, you can fold that cream glue tab down and just add a peg onto that whilst we're working so that it stays nicely in position, and then we can just push this slightly to give it that curvature. Catch the middle one, so I'm pressing from the inside to catch that middle tab just to get that one into position, and then I'm just using my fingers from the inside to press those glue tabs, as from the outside I kind of push it so that it's going to line up with this. And just keep going backwards and forwards, pressing the different glue tabs inside there just to make sure that they're going to firmly stick onto there. And then once that glue has dried, we can move on to the other side of the wellie. So prising this apart like so, so you can actually get to that bottom glue tab down there. And then repeating the same thing again. So we want to make sure that that top glue tab is in the perfect position first. So really pressing it tightly to get it to bond. And then once we feel like it has bonded nicely, we can fold that top glue tab down and just peg it into position, and then we can go from the inside pressing the glue tabs, and then from the outside we're just sort of curving that front piece so everything is following that curve of the side of the wellie. Okay, so we've got that piece in position now. And now for the back of the wellie, to complete your actual gift box, you can see you've got a quite sizable sort of gift because it goes right down into the toe inside there, so you've got a nice space for your gift. But for this back of your wellie, you need another one of these pieces. This time we're keeping it in the full sort of capacity, and I have cut mine from a pattern paper because I'm going to add green onto the side of these wellies later. I thought it would be quite nice that it goes pattern over here and then we'll have pattern on the back as a different sort of design feature. So I have cut mine out of pattern paper, and you'll notice on your piece there's no glue tab on the bottom, but we actually want there to be a glue tab on the bottom so that you can secure the sort of heel of your boot into position. But there isn't, so we need to add one on. And the way you need to do this is, there's this extra die in the die set. So you need one of these and one of these. It doesn't particularly matter what colour this is because this is just a glue tab. But you need to think about which way you're adding this on, because when the boot comes together, only one boot panel has a glue tab here, which is on the left-hand side if we're looking at it this way. So when we put our glue tab on the base of our wellie, we want the glue tab panel to be on the right-hand side so that we've got one on the left and one on the right. And there's kind of two ways that you can do it. You can either flip it round the reverse way and be sticking your glue on the back of your die cut and stick it on like I have here, or I think you can get away with sticking it this way. So instead of using the glue tab of this panel to glue it to the back of your wellie, use the correct right side of this piece, do your pre-folding on this. I think maybe this is the correct way actually, because the first time I made them I did all of this piece wrong. I think maybe this is the correct way to do it then. So you have the professional side towards you, and instead of sticking the panel onto the glue tab is just going to be the glue tab, and we're actually sticking our panel onto that piece there. That makes way more sense for this piece. So that is how you are supposed to do this. So we're going to add our glue onto the front side of this and then press that into position onto there. So now we have got our glue tab on the base of our back, of the boot, and we've got a glue tab on the right hand side. So now we have a glue tab on the right hand side and a glue tab on the left hand side, so that's going to work absolutely perfectly. So that is the correct way round to do it. Originally I had stuck it on using the glue tab and then the opposite way round, and then when I went to put it on I had two tabs on the same side and it wasn't working. So you're not sticking the glue tab onto the back of this piece, you're sticking the larger rectangle onto the bottom of this back portion of your wellie. It's a bit confusing in the instructions, but that is the way that you are supposed to do it. So let's pre-fold this one now then, so I'll show you with the correctly assembled one how this goes together. So for all of these little scalloped glue tabs for any of the pieces that have them on, I tend to just fold them all down like that and then run my glide folder along the crease just so they're all nice and firmly creased on the score line, and the same on the other side. So first of all we need to stick this to the back of our wellie, and if you remember from before we still have a little piece of red liner tape going across the back of the heel here, so we can now use this to stick that glue tab onto and place that across the back, pressing it firmly into place, and then when we add our second sole on, that will firmly hold that, and we can actually do that now. That was the last piece that we wanted to stick on, so we can actually take our second sole die cut, and even though there is a left wellie and a right wellie, the soles are actually symmetrical, so the only thing that's going to make it look like the left or right foot is how you decorate it. Both shoes are actually exactly the same. So we can add glue around the perimeter of this panel, a bit in the middle, and then just sandwich all of those glue tabs with our second sole die cut. And while that glue is drying we can get to the same point with our other wellie as well. Okay, now we want to start bringing this heel in together. So we've got this glue tab here, and we've got this one that was already existing on the back of the wellie, so we can stick those into position first. So tuck that one inside. They're in different places just because of the way this glue tab has been added, but we're just going to tuck them in and use them to secure the back heel of our wellie. Again, glide folder, bone folder, ruler, pen, anything that you have is going to be really helpful for getting pressure down into that bottom corner while you get a good bond with those glue tabs. And then we can just do the same thing that we were doing with this front piece here, although we haven't got as much of a curve to follow this time, which is nice. So we're going to add our glue onto all of these little panels here. And again, there is a slight curvature, so we want to line up the top one perfectly, because it's more important that this top piece is in the perfect lined up position for our rectangle that goes on the top that we'll be putting on in a minute. So we want to make sure that all of those score lines and everything are lined up really nicely along that top edge, and then again we can fold it down and put a peg on it to hold it into position, and then we can ease the rest of these little glue tabs into position down the back edge of our wellie. A little bit harder to kind of press from the inside, but again, glide folder is brilliant at just going in there and getting all of those glue tabs to stay stuck onto the side. And then the final side of the wellie, we're doing the exact same thing, adding our adhesive onto all of those little semicircular glue tabs, and then poking them all behind the panel first, and then getting that top one lined up perfectly. So we're focusing on this horizontal score line that goes all the way around, if you weren't quite sure what I mean by perfectly lining it up. And again, we can put a peg there, and then we can just gently move that into its slightly curved position on this back edge. And there we have the finished base of our wellie. So now our main base of our wellie is all nice and dry, we want to add the rectangle sort of hole piece on the top that gives you the perfect place for our lid to sit. So to create this, the instructions actually only say to take one and stick it on the top, but I always like to do a couple so that everything's going to be really nice and secure. So I've cut 2 of these, and this is using 2 of the rectangles from the set. So there are actually 3 rectangles that nest inside each other. When we're creating the lid of this box in a minute, we'll be using the smallest rectangle and we'll be using the largest rectangle. But to create this skinny frame here, we're actually using the largest and the second one down, which has all of the metal around the edge of it. And the reason why they have done it this way is so that it makes it super duper easy for you to line that rectangle right up in the centre to give you the perfect frame every time you cut. So we want those 2 dies for creating this little frame piece here. And I have added red liner tape to the back of one of them because I do find this is the easiest sort of way to get bits and pieces like this to stick and stay stuck in the right position. So I'm just going to take off the backing to all of this. And then I'm going to start with a long edge, and I've splayed all of my glue tabs outwards on this top section here, and I'm going to start by sticking this long side into position. So I'm lining up the cut edge of this frame with the score line of the edge of that wellie boot there. And I'm tacking it down and then pressing really firmly. And then I'm going to push this down and stick it on the other side of the wellie. Now this may seem like it's not fitting perfectly, but it actually doesn't matter. When you put the second one on top, it covers it up and fits absolutely perfectly on top, so don't worry about that. But if you're pressing those 2 down, and then you're going with the 2 opposite short sides on here as well. And there we've got that top little rectangle in position. And then we want to take our second rectangle, add a nice lot of glue all over the back of it so it's going to securely bond down, and then add that directly over the top. And this can actually be the opening of your wellie if you want it to, or you can create a lid for this as well. We are going to do the lid, but you can just leave it like that if you want it to. Maybe we want it to be a pen pot or something on your desk, and you can actually just leave it open like so. But I'll show you those same steps again on the second one. So we're just going to take all of those pegs off, fold all of these flaps outwards, take one of our little frames that has the red liner tape on there, line up the cut edge along this long side with the fold line of the side of the wellie just there, tack it into place, and then press really firmly, press it all the way down, and do the exact same on the other side, pressing that down and then doing the 2 shorter sides as well. And then we just finish this off by adding our second rectangle over the top. So in the instructions it says you only need 1 of this rectangle piece, but for my version like this, you're going to need 2 rectangle frame pieces per wellie, and then you're also going to need 2 of the solid larger rectangles for each of the lids as well. So there we go, can press that one into place too. So that is the main construction done, other than our lid, and at this point we can actually add the treads of our wellies onto here as well. So bring back in the first pieces that we created, and all we're going to do is add glue all of the way around the edges, making sure we're getting all of those glue tabs, so we're going to have a nice glued on sole. We're not going to have any pieces like flapping up, and a little bit across the middle, and then press this into place. And the way we assembled this sole to begin with, this is now the professional side that's showing, which is really nice. And you can see how you didn't need an extra one in between there. Just the two that we added in cream and then the one in the brown is perfect for finishing this off. We can just make sure that that has got a good bond all of the way around, and then we can leave that to dry. So while they're now drying, we want to make the lids of our wellies. For each lid, you're going to need 2 of that larger rectangle. Of those 3 little small nesting ones, you need 2 of the large one. I have also cut 2 of the medium-sized one, which is what you actually use to cut the hole in the top of your wellie. You can see this is the same size. I've cut 2 of those out of the patterned paper so we can use those as a decoration on the top. Then you're also going to need 2 of the smallest of those rectangles as well. I've already used one, and on the back of this you want to add some red liner tape. And then you're also going to need 2 of this piece here, and these actually go together to create this little portion, which is kind of like a lip to sit inside the rectangle on the top of the box, and that's how the lid holds on. So to create that, you want to take these 2 pieces, you want to fold all of the glue tabs on them. Everything is a mountain fold away from you, from the professional side. So we can just fold all of those. With such small score lines, if you want to make sure that they're perfectly straight, when you're folding it in half, make sure these are lining up. And then you'll make sure that that tiny little side score line is perfectly straight. And just get all of those folded nicely. Then you want to take this smallest rectangle that you've put the red liner tape on the back of, and you want to start with a small end. So we're adhesive facing up, and we're starting with a small end here because that is the end that has the glue tab on, and you know we want to start with that end so that it makes it easier. And then we're basically lining up this corner. So this corner just here, we're lining up with the corner of that, and then making sure that the glue tab, the cut line of this rectangle is right up against the score line of the glue tab, and then just put that one on like that, and then repeat with the other one, and then they're going to line up perfectly. And because this one has also got a glue tab and we're putting it on second, we're making sure that our glue tab goes behind the straight side that we've already got on there, and then folding this one in, pulling this one round, and then once you've got to this point, there's the 2 glue tabs now that you just add a little bit of adhesive on the back of those to hold that into position. So it's basically like a mini little box that you're creating almost, and this is what is going to hold the lid onto the top of the wellie boot. So we've got those 2 pieces done now, and the reason why there are 2 of these pieces here is because another variation of the wellie boot is to be able to put little pull-on handles on the side of the boot. So if you want to do the pull-on handles, you want to add those in between these 2 die cuts so that you're not seeing the little glue tabs of where they're added on. But for this one, I'm going to omit the little handles and just have it as a plain sort of wellie boot that you would pull on, rather than it being more of a child's wellie boot. However, I do want to add this little almost like a little fabric tab at the back. You know, oftentimes you get little boots that have the little fabric tab. I probably should have put it under there, but I totally forgot. So this is just a small long die that cuts out with a stitching piece, and I've just folded them over and stuck them at the glue tab, and I think I'm going to stick this between these 2 panels. So it's going to be on the lid rather than on the back of the wellie boot. So I'm just going to add a bit of adhesive onto there, press that one into position, a little bit of adhesive onto this one, and press that one into position. And as that is the only thing that I'm sandwiching in this case, we can add the other one. And that will just sandwich that into position. And then we can add our decorative panel on top of that as well, just to add a little bit of extra patterning onto this wellie boot, and repeat the same again. And then we just want to flip that over and glue this right in the centre. So we're putting glue on the sort of piece that we were adding all of our glue tabs onto, flipping it over and sticking it on. And we can just eyeball the centre. This is slightly bigger than the opening in the top of the wellie, so it doesn't matter if it's not 100% in the centre, it will still wiggle around a little bit and will go on nice and straight for you. So we can do the same on the other one. And now we've got the two lids of our wellies ready. So the next part of this decoration is totally optional. You can just leave it here. You could have done this from a patterned paper or the green cardstock and just had your green wellie already done. However, I think it looks quite nice to sort of cover that seam a little bit between the tread and the bottom of the wellie boot. So on my previous pair that I made, I added a patterned paper panel onto it that overlapped that little gap a little bit, and then it leaves a nice little coloured portion just along the top. So we're going to have like a little cream border that sort of edges our green panel in this case, but I think it looks really nice just to sort of cover that slight little join there and just add another colour into it, so it's not just a plain looking wellie, you've got that sort of dimension of having an extra colour on there. So to do this, we're pretty much just chopping off all of the glue tabs, and then we're just going to shift it down a little bit when we stick it on. So it's very simple to do. You just want to take your guillotine, and then instead of lining up against any of the straight lines, because we don't know 100% if they're definitely straight, just eyeball it on the side here. So when you're putting, it's hard to show on a guillotine, but when you're lining this up against the edge here, if you just look how far away that score line is from the cutting line of your guillotine, and you're just lining it up the same distance down here as you are up there, and then that's how you sort of cut off the same amount of a slither all the way down this panel. So you'll end up with a piece like that. Rather than just cutting off the glue tabs, we're cutting off the glue tabs with a little sliver as well. So let's do all of those pieces first, and it'll be the same for either side of the boot. We're just cutting the same amount. Then each of the wellie boots also has the tab at the top as what we used as part of the construction. So again, snip that off just a bit lower than the score line, so we're actually snipping off the score line and a tiny bit below it as well. So we're going to do that on all 4 of these. So those 2 are now finished. One side is completely finished because it doesn't have any other glue tabs. The other side, we just want to trim off the glue tabs in the same way. So all of the glue tabs that are on here, we just want to trim those off like so. So we've now got all of our wellie panels, and don't forget this is totally optional, this piece, so you definitely don't have to do this if you don't want to. And then you can try them up against the side of your wellie to see just sort of rough placement of where they're going to end up going, and you can kind of see if you pull it down a little bit, you're just going to get a nice little border across the top, and then you also get this kind of like slither coming down the side as well, which I think just adds an extra element. A lot of posher kind of trainers and shoes and things have like extra little trims in different colours, so it kind of gives that sort of a look to the wellie as well, which I think is really lovely. So to attach these, the way I did the patterned paper ones is I just went to town with a load of double-sided tape all over the back of them. So I'll do that and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so they've all got a lovely lot of double-sided adhesive on the back of these now. So we can take all of this tissue tape liner off of here. I just used a mixture of 12 and 6mm dependent on where I was placing it and what fitted better. And then once you've taken that off, there are a couple of areas that are just tricky to kind of add tape to. So anywhere right up against the edges where you think you need a little bit of extra glue on there, just add those on with a little bit of wet glue. And then you can bring your wellie in and position this onto here. So we're going down a little bit from the top. We're making sure we're covering that seam because that was the main point of putting this on, and then we're pulling this round. And I have just remembered, we cut off the glue tab that was on the end here. I left it on the previous one, so we had a neater join on the front of the wellie. We are going to have a gap on this one, but we've got some beautiful butterflies. I think a little butterfly on the front of there would be perfect to just cover that up, so no one will be able to see our little join at the front. But we've got one side of the wellie on. I just think it looks really nice having this little slither of a different colour on there. I think it just gives it a different look, so that's just an option if you want to do that. I thought I would show you how I did it just in case there's anybody who's interested, but if not, then just follow Tonic's instructions and stop at that point and add the rest of your decoration onto your wellie. Okay, a bit more adhesive in some of these areas. And then again, on the back of the wellie, we're just going down a little bit from the top. Oop. And covering up that little seam along the bottom. We're just going to have a little gap on the front, but I think that will quite nicely, cover. Just that little seam there. Okay, we can press this on nicely. And then we've got our beautiful green wellie that we're going to add extra decoration to as well. I decided to just utilise a little bit of these pieces and put them just across that middle piece there. But when you make yours, don't cut that front glue tab off of one of the sides and then just place that piece down first and then the other one overlaps it, and then you don't get a little join there. But I thought if I do that and then add, well, we could either add a butterfly or we could add a flourish. No, I think a butterfly will look good. I might not add that now yet, just in case I knock it when we're doing the rest of the decoration. So, we haven't finished yet. We still need to finish our decoration. So, we've got our lid for each of our wellies that we can add on. And this works as a handle really as well, which is quite nice. And we also have these little pieces, like little like the rubber pieces that are on the front to stop you from scuffing the front of your shoes. So we can add one of these onto each of the front toe pieces, and I've actually cut them from the same colour as the sole to sort of tie that colour in a little bit more, as well as that back tag as well. So we can add these on. Like so. And we've got one for the other shoe as well. Like that. So we've now got that part. Then I said before we have a piece that covers this join just here. So this little piece, you need one of each for each wellie boot. And you can use that just in that sort of position there to cover that join and make it look nice and neat right at the front of your wellie boot there. It's also the perfect place to put a little sentiment on, and there is a beautiful sentiment die in the set that fits on that perfectly. Okay, put that like that, and then we've got this one as well. There we go. So we've got those two little pieces on the front there too. Then on the sort of, I'll just go with one and keep decorating one for you, but on this back heel you have these pieces that will fit on there really nicely. So I've cut them from the cream, and then I've used the smaller die down to cut the patterned paper to tie both colours back in, and we can just stick those on the back corner of the wellie. On both sides you have both handedness of them, so they fit on there very nicely. And place that one into position. And then, instead of having those little handles that I was showing you before on the lid, you can actually do an eyelet kind of system going all the way around the top of the wellie. So it looks like that there's some kind of cord tied through it, and then you can have a bow at the front. Now, I've cut the pieces out of a few different colours, but we need to make sure we get the distance correct so that this little piece can actually fit nicely between them. And I have actually cut more of these from Inca Gold because I was thinking of filling in these holes with the darker colour and then using the Inca Gold to go between them. So I'll show you sticking this on this one side, and then I'll finish all of the rest of them so you can see it going all of the way around the wellie. But you just want to make sure that you're getting it so that they're sort of a nice distance apart, so the string looks like it can actually reach through both of the little holes on the side of the wellie as well. So let's do the little outside rings first. I've cut these from Gold Dust glitter card, and then I've cut the central pieces from the same colour that I cut the sole of the wellie from, so a nice deep dark colour tone. And then the little strings to go between I've cut from Inca Gold to give a nice beautiful pop of another shiny gold colour. So we can just add those inside like so. And then you can put the little string going between them. So I'll do the rest of the other sides of both wellies, and then we'll come back to do the front piece together, because we can actually put a bow in the front so it looks like it's actually tied together with a bow. Okay, so I've got to the point where it looks like the string is all of the way around the wellies, and just a note, when you're die cutting you're going to need 8 eyelets per wellie, 8 of the inside pieces per wellie, and then 4 of the little strings and 1 bow per wellie as well. Well, I mean, it does depend if you want to decorate the back or not. You may only need 6 if you don't want to decorate the back, but I think having it all the way around looks really lovely. And then I've cut the bows out of Inca Gold, but I also have them out of the dark colour as well, and I wasn't sure if they look nice if we shadowed them. No, I think maybe just the Inca Gold is fine by itself. Okay, so we're going to add an Inca Gold bow on each of them, and I'm thinking if we offset them a little bit, it's going to give more of the illusion of a left and a right wellie, rather than, because they're both exactly the same, rather than them looking like 2 of the same wellie, if we, when we're decorating, if we just slightly move some decorations on the left of one wellie and the right of the other wellie, it's going to give it more of a left and right kind of look, because we've done this topping piece on this wellie which is the same all the way around, whereas the other pair of wellies that I've done, I've used this piece with the buckle, so these are on the outsides of the wellies, so you can tell which one's the left and the right, but it's quite nice to be able to sort of distinguish a little bit between them. So now we can put the lids back on our wellies as well and see what other decoration we want to put. I have got some more bows, but I don't know if they're really going to need any more bows. I've got the butterflies, and I do think a butterfly on the front of each of those there would look nice, possibly even a butterfly on the lids as well, just a couple of butterflies up there. And then we've also got these beautiful flourishy swirly patterns, which we could possibly put a couple of them on each of the boots as well to kind of add a little bit more fancy decoration. I think that'll look really nice on these. So we're going to go gorgeous Inca Gold butterfly, and we're just going to put them in different positions just to make them look different from each other on the tops of these lids, because they could be interchanged. It doesn't really matter which lid goes on which. Then we're going to put the butterfly on the front as well. Like so. And this one as well. And then I think this flourish looks nice like this. However, we only have the flourish in one direction, so it's going to make both shoes look the same again. I think that looks quite nice actually. I know it does make them look identical again, but it doesn't look like they're too identical. I think that's going to work nicely. So I will stick these on and I'll show you up closer what they look like. Okay, so we've got them looking like this now. We've got our butterfly on the front, we've got a butterfly up there, and then we've got fairly plain looking sides, but I think it's just the right amount of busyness. My other pair is very busy. It's more like Glastonbury wellies or something like that. So you can go fully to town with your decoration, or you can go a little bit more sleek and simple. And I do still have some bows left. Maybe we could put brown bows, the dark brown bows, on the actual shoe themselves. No, I think I like it without. I think we're going to leave those two there. So I hope you enjoyed this video looking at how to put together the Wonderful Wellies, plus showing you using them in conjunction with the Puddle Perfect papers as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye!